Now, on to the wonderful Debbie Richards. I have had the pleasure of getting to know Debbie over the past few years, seeing her at various conferences and things like that. And not only is she very smart and very passionate about technology and very much an early adopter and somebody who's just always curious and looking into these things. She's also very committed to mentoring and being a great person. And I was thinking this morning, I think Debbie is really, she's the mentor or aunt that you've always wanted. So I'm so excited that Debbie is here today. And with that, I'm not going to continue to talk because you're here to hear from her and not me. So, Debbie, I'm going to turn it over to you. And thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you, Jill. I'm going to go ahead and launch my presentation. All right, so today we're going to be talking about how to prepare your organization to adopt new technologies. I did want to provide my contact information for everyone. Um, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, if you've got questions afterwards, if I didn't answer everything, or you just want to talk to me privately, please reach out to me. I love to connect with the community and help as well. A lot of the information that I'm going to share with you is from a TD at Work guide that I wrote from ATD on the same topic. And if you are a member of ATD, you can download this guide for free via the PDF. Otherwise, there's a nominal charge. I don't make any money off of it. It's just for the community. So would love to have you to have that. But in the meantime, I did provide a resource checklist for you. And Luke has just shared that in the chat. If you're interested with that, you can download that, and that'll give you some baseline information about what we're going to be talking about today. I loved seeing everything that everybody shared about adopting new technologies last year. I know for me, I work with companies to help them implement new technologies or to work across functions. One of the things that I participated in last year is we changed our talent management program for one of the companies I work for from being a part of a learning management system to being a part of an HRIS system. And the learning team was brought in towards the end of that implementation, which was not a perfect thing to happen. Um, but I'm going to be talking a little bit about that and about some other things as we go through. So the first thing I want to talk about is just some things that I'll be sharing along the way. And I'll be asking some poll questions and getting some feedback from you. Please feel free to share things in the chat. I know Jill and Luke will be going to be looking at it. I'll be looking at it as well. But the first thing that I want to talk about is um, understanding how you can investigate those technologies, how to pull together the right team. I think a pilot program is essential. And then finally, how to launch and fine tune your program. And I'll share a few case studies as well. The first thing that I wanted to bring up is, as L&D professionals, I think this is probably standard for all of us. If we have an hour to solve a problem and your life depended on it, I would say I'd spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. And for me, that's vital because you need to know, number one, what is the purpose and some drill down details, but that's essential. One of the challenges is for us as L&D professionals is making sure we have a seat at the table. And for food for thought is what happens when you are the last to know about something that's coming up. For example, let's say your team has this project worked out for mandatory compliance training, and then you're suddenly asked to train on a new software process, and upper management says this is going to take priority over anything else you're doing. And you have to drop it, and and start working on that new project. Or if you're aware of change burnout among employees, but you've heard that a new technology is coming on board for the company for greater productivity, and you're going to have to be brought in to make that happen. I don't know about you, but I find these things happening all the time, um, and they're a constant challenge. So I'm going to ask you your first poll question, and that question is, when are you brought in to help on training with new technologies? And I think Luke is going to give you some choices. And if one of those choices doesn't reflect your position, feel free to put something in the chat, and I'll give you a few minutes to answer the poll. I think we've got 50 people here too, so we're getting some great participation from everybody. Somebody says I could have selected all of these depending on the day. I agree. And it looks like, amazingly enough, a lot of you are seeing this happen at the very beginning of the process, which is wonderful. I know sometimes it happens. People we're an afterthought, and they come up and say, "Okay, they're doing their UAT testings, and they're saying, well, maybe we need training for this." Um, or when there are challenges with the adoption. I was talking to a gentleman this past week, and he had to drop everything last week and develop some training for a product that was getting ready to be launched, and it was a help desk product. And they hadn't communicated to people how to use the help desk product, and people were having a lot of challenges with it. And so they said, "Oh, I guess we thought this product was going to be so easy, anybody could use it, but I guess we need at least a job aid for these people um, to help them." So let's go ahead, Luke, and close this poll, and we'll go on. Hopefully everybody can see the results. That's very interesting. Thanks for sharing. All right, so let's go ahead and go on. For me, I think for greater effectiveness, we have to be an early part of the technology implementation process. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about how to make that happen. But that is going to be an essential part of anything that we do. Now I'm going to go ahead and have you answer a second poll question. And this question is, what's the most important factor when you're considering new technology adoption? And I'll have Luke throw that up. So we're looking at cost, popularity, alignment with company goals, ease of implementation. If you've got something else that you want to answer, go ahead and throw that in the chat as well. Looks like almost everybody's done. And I love that most of you are answering alignment with company goals, because for me, that's the most important thing. Um, okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and then share the results so you can see that as well. So yeah, so most of you said alignment with company goals. And to me, that's that's the most important thing that's going to achieve the best results. So we're gonna dig down into that now, and I'm going to move on and talk about some of the things that you should be doing when you're thinking about this. So first of all, I believe in evaluating the current landscape. So look at the current technologies the company is using and the organizational strategy around that technology. So does the company seek to help its employees and their customers with upgraded technology? What do the employees and customers think about that? And if it's something that they're going to use, is it mesh with things that they're already using? And the way to do that is, of course, to ask lots of questions. So I always look at why we're investigating it, what processes are in place, what's the infrastructure for the technology, communication, how does that happen? A lot of times that comes from IT or from L&D or marketing, and maybe that needs to be from a operations group or somebody who has a lot of impact across the organization. And then how is the company measuring and evaluating that technology? And this is not just restricted to L&D. This is overall overarching for the organization. And of course, technology integration doesn't happen by itself. So L&D, where we come in, is we can help others understand whether the tool will address the business challenges, whether it'll help the employees work more efficiently, and obstacles that may hinder the adoption. So a lot of research and analysis is done to anticipate the risks and threats around the new technology. There may be opposition to change. I see that. I don't know about you, but I see that as one of the main factors in resistance. Or there may be other company initiatives that take away from the project. So looking at an inventory, what tools and information are being used right now, and what is the overall strategy for the organization, and then understanding, you know, who do you ask and how do you get information? Many times I'll find that one group is sharing information and it's totally different. It's a totally different perspective from another group. You know, if you talk to somebody in IT, they have an entirely different perspective than marketing or from an operations unit, from sales, you know, so getting all of that information is vital. And then making sure that you have a good understanding of what the organization's capacity to change is super important as well. So taking a little bit of time to research and making sure that you understand those requirements. They may be documented by a group like IT, but that may not be the right information that's needed for your part of the technology introduction. So having a good understanding across the organization is essential. So just like anything else we do, there are some key components and some key steps. So first of all, making sure that we outline what the needs and requirements are, and we have the goals and timelines in mind, you know, especially if somebody says, hey, we're going to roll out this technology next week. Can you have the learning materials developed for me in 2 days? Well, maybe that's not reasonable, but you've got to give them some achievable goals and let them know why it's going to take more time. And what I find, I don't know about you guys, but I find a lot of times my goals and my timelines are tied back to my subject matter experts or my resources, because you can develop those that information. If you have the right information, you can turn it around, but then you need to make sure that it is reviewed and approved by those folks that are going to be using it. Um, then making sure that you have figure out what are the metrics that you're going to offer as insights to the changes is very important too, so that you can map those yourself. And of course, making sure that you have everything documented. If there's terminology differences, if there's things that are big change management things, those all things need to be have to be considered, and you can develop those as part of your pilot program. And then finally, you have to create that rollout strategy. Typically, we do a pilot program, and we may do a pilot program with a small group of people, um, and then take that same program and go to a larger group. And sometimes I've even done a pilot program where I'll have people go ahead and use the technology without the learning pieces that we have, and then have them do it with the learning pieces that we've provided just to see what the difference is, you know, as part of that evaluation strategy. I never do a big bang rollout where we just say, okay, we're going to launch this piece, and then here's the training materials. You can go off and look at those whenever you have time. It's always a matter of let's do a very thoughtful rollout where we may roll out to different groups, get some feedback, and make iteration changes as we're going along. Okay, so let's go to our next poll question. And who should be involved in the early stages of technology implementation? Well, we know we should, but let's look at some of the other choices. Our choices are only IT, only senior leadership, L&D and key stakeholders, are all employees. So I'll give you a second to answer that. It's kind of a staged question, but and this is if you have the luxury of helping to control that as well. So most of you are saying L&D and key stakeholders. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share it with you so you can see that. There were a few views that said all employees. Um, that I don't know that that would be a great idea to do. Um, but let's go ahead and go through and look at um, some thoughts around this. So first of all, I think it's really important to have a general team that you're going to provide information back for. Now, these people may not be involved in the actual development or pilot, but they're people that are going to be able to be your evangelist or give you some risk information as you go along. So, in thinking of terms like I've done LMS implementations and different technology implementations with different organizations. And we always look for a senior leader to be our sponsor. And a lot of times we have that person give out the communications. And then different stakeholders and different functions. So, like operations, HR, safety. You may, with contracts and other things, you may have to have purchasing, legal, IT involved. And then you want an implementation team. So that may be an in-house group or some external consultants. So these people may not be boots on the ground involved in everything you're doing, but I typically try to do some sort of launch meeting with them and some communications with them. And this really helps with the success of the program because they're highly aware of what's going on, and you can give them the things that you're doing, what the milestones that have been achieved. If there's any challenges that you need their help with, then you can address those as well. So consider these type of people as the general team that you get involved. And then there's a specific team. So the specific team might be a project manager, an architect that's going to help with the overall scope of the project, your IT person. I always involve security in whatever I'm doing. a communications person, a data analysis person, and a training person. And these are the day-to-day folks that would be involved in the project. In IT, I have seen us have to get down to the nitty-gritty, and I'm just going to pull all these out because these are some of the people that have been getting involved in implementations in projects. I don't know if any of you guys have seen this as well, but I have on projects that I'm doing, have had to present in front of a committee, share a lot of IT data, security data, information that they need, especially in the cybersecurity arena. Make sure that you bring the right person in from IT and question IT on who else needs to be involved. Now, there's a comment from the chat bot saying that you should also have business representatives from a business process perspective, and that's probably a good idea as well, because they're going to look at the tool, its usage. There's any number of people that you're going to want to have involved. Some of these people are going to have day-to-day or direct work processes, but other people you're just going to get, like with some other IT people, get their check and sign off on something, and or just use people as you need to. But awareness for all these people is critical for the success of your program. So this is in a real small scale. This is some of the things that I include in my project plan. One of the first things that I develop. So I always, talk about pilot testing, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. I talk about the launch, about how we're going to do the launch, and then our change management and who's going to support us as far as senior leaders. These are all key components of making your projects a success. And I want to make sure that I have that fully outlined before we move forward. And then there's a comment in the chat about Michelle said that they also have a data privacy assessment along with a security assessment. Those are fantastic to have. That you've got to have all your ducks in a row, all that paperwork done in order to make sure that your rollout is a success. So one of the things that I think is really important is that L&D plays a key part as a role model. So when you're thinking about that, an L&D team should consider its own use of new tools and their accompanying processes. And I noticed that at the very beginning of this, some of you went in and commented on the fact that you're bringing AI tools into the organization. I know a lot of companies that are using Microsoft 365 are bringing Copilot into their organization. And then what we need to do is we need to consider how we want the L&D function to be seen and how it can be used as a role model for more effective working methods. So if you're bringing in this new technology, I noticed somebody said that they were bringing in Microsoft Teams. You need to be a proficient user of Teams, try out some of the different pieces, become an evangelist, share tips and tricks, that you can provide as well. But it's important for us. We have to, to eat the sandwich as well. We don't have to just serve the sandwich, right? So we need to make sure that we are setting ourselves up as role models for whatever we're doing. Yeah, and so here I'm going to share a case study now and just talk a little bit about a technology. So one of the things that I've been doing a lot of work with is immersive technology. So that's either virtual reality or augmented reality. And this is a fairly new technology for some organizations. And what I have found is when people look at technology like this, the first thing that they do is say, oh, we got to get a headset and we need to just go in and try using virtual reality. And I'm like, no. I have a friend who says that she works for a big hospital and they have a closet full of VR headsets because somebody decided that they wanted to try VR and they just bought all these headsets. And they didn't think about, well, what are we going to put on them? What are we going to use? So the most important thing in immersive learning is to identify an application that you want to use. Um, I think that, it is okay to get a headset and explore content, but we need to make sure that we do the same thing we do with any other project. So that is defining that business problem you want to, solve, figuring out what type of immersive solution works for you, and then align it with the company's business strategy and maybe a business unit whenever you're doing it. So please don't do that. Please just don't go out and buy headsets and start that process. It's also very important to understand the company's digital literacy and openness to innovation. So some companies are just not open right away to new technologies, and their employees are not comfortable with learning new technologies and trying new experiences. They say, I just want to get my job done and go home. So we have to understand how we're going to what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So if we decide to move forward with immersive technology, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define that team. So that team, that general team and then that specific team, and we're going to kick off the project. And it's really important to develop that first use case. So when you're talking about developing a first use case, we're going to detail the current state, and we're going to look at challenges that we face. And this is the same thing we do for any kind of learning, right? We look at what the downtime is, what the time is to resolve issues, what are our training costs, our new employee ramp up, and then we come up with an ROI because we've got to justify the expense of what we're doing. We also want to make sure that our leadership is supportive of what we're trying to do. We've got to know if there's a budget or if we're going to have to reallocate funds from something else. And then if you need to get financial support, who can you go to? Can you go to operations? Can you go to safety, or can you go to quality and ask them for money as well? And then finally, can you build a budget for future projects? So, thinking in terms of doing a pilot now and then saying, okay, based on what we're doing with the pilot, here's our strategy for the next 3 years to bring immersive learning into the environment. So, I think that's really important before you go too far down the road, is to make sure that you've done those things. Um, so then if you're looking at choosing equipment, you may have to pick the equipment that's best for your training, and that's going to depend on how many learners you have to bring in, what the budget is, what the technical requirements of the actual training modules that you're doing. All of those things are essential. So you don't just go out and buy equipment and then expect it to run on any type of environment. And then you also need to think about the infrastructure for your organization. So, one of the companies that I worked with, they had a lot of manufacturing plants, and we had to look at their network bandwidth and their ability to manage those systems, with the Wi-Fi. They didn't have a real strong Wi-Fi presence, so we couldn't use it in the factory floor. And then we also needed to consider the ongoing maintenance and technical support. So, the hardware component would be perhaps handled by IT. They consider it just another piece of equipment. So, just like sending laptops out or smartphones, they'd send out headphones, but they need the proper device management software to manage those. And the people need to be trained in order to use those, and they have to know how to handle help desk requests. Um, so all of those things are important because L&D doesn't want to be the people that are doing, equipment failure and support along with the training and everything else. So there's that bringing those other people back into the team to make sure that they're part of that project. So then there is the idea of creating that environment and creating that virtual reality or that augmented reality experience and working with subject matter experts, just like you do on any other learning content. But in this case, the challenge is resources. Making sure that you have the people that can develop that kind of training. You may need different types of instructional designers. May need to bring in 3D artists or different kinds of people who can shoot 3D 360 video. And you may need to consider bringing in an external partner who can help you with that. Many times when I'm doing a pilot, I'll either use off-the-shelf content for virtual reality, or I will use something that is a small custom developed piece where we can turn around and we can show results. So in that case, making sure that we can measure and show the metrics of what we're doing, and understanding how we're going to share the impact and effectiveness of the program. We want to try to establish that up front. And then as we're working through our process, we're continually taking notes on things and being able to report back on our results. So part of that is, of course, to make sure that you, as you're going along, that you detail all of the system requirements and the data requirements, and then you launch that pilot so that you can try to work through it. Now, what I do is I'll test it with a small group and then get feedback, and then use this feedback to refine the program and improve the learning experience. So just like when we do a new system where we go through and do UAT testing, we'll do some of the same type of testing in VR with our users. We may test this small group. We may bring in that team of people that we've been talking to. I did this with a group where I brought in some operations people, the safety manager. We brought in a risk analysis specialist, and some other people, and it was really interesting to see their feedback. In one case, there was a person in HR who looked at our pilot, and she said, we were doing a program to show how to do a process on the assembly line, and she said, I could use this in recruiting new employees. She said, I'm going to go out to colleges and I'm going to go out to high schools, and I can show them what it would be like to work at our company. And she thought that, and we'd never considered that, just she thought that would be an excellent use of the tool because might make the actual work a little more interesting to these folks, to have them engage and understand how they would work in the factory. So she was all excited about that, and I had never considered that. And then in another instance, we had somebody come in, and he was involved in safety, and he put on the headset. We had we're designing a custom application for this energy company, and he said, you've already got the floor plan and you're walking them through this area. He said, how much more would it take for you to create some small safety issues where we could have them then respond to that and have that scenario built in, because we already have the infrastructure built in. And we're like, well, that's an excellent use of the technology. We can add that as a next step. And by the way, do you have some budget money that you can share with us in order to do that? So there's always those things that come up as you're testing it. Then thinking in terms of deploying the technology, it's the idea of doing that deployment in small stages so you can test the effectiveness and you can make adjustments. So never do the big bang rollout, especially with this type of technology. You want to have that out as a small group and then launch, kind of an iterative fashion, and bring more people on board. Now, some other things that you can do in this arena is you can go in and you can offer workshops to educate teams on the technology to get them excited and maybe perhaps to to build those evangelists to help you. You will provide information on the benefits of using the technology, and then develop your L&D competencies with VR. And then think about using it as a part of existing programs such as employee onboarding. So you could offer detailed office tours or introductions to teams and an outline of the organizational values. So there's lots of things that you can do as L&D professionals to help with bringing this forward. So I hope that was useful to everyone. That's just one example of how I bring and introduce new technologies into the organization. I'm going to share another one, which may be something that's dear and near to your hearts. So here's an example of PowerPoint, and as part of PowerPoint, my version of PowerPoint, I've got Copilot included in it. Okay, and I know for one of my customers, they said, Debbie, all of a sudden Copilot just appeared in Microsoft 365, and IT didn't tell us that they were going to turn that switch on. And now we've got people that are clamoring and asking us about this. And so the idea would be to, backtrack a little bit and give people some guidance and establish an AI policy and look at what we're going to use. And what I would suggest is whenever you're doing anything with AI, is you need to figure out where those applications would produce positive outcomes, and look at your existing workflow and how AI is going to alter these. For example, AI has been included in Adobe Acrobat and other tools that we use on a regular basis. And sometimes those things are already implemented. I also look at developing an L&D strategy for AI integration for the company, including resources and training. And that training might be, just a quick webinar workshop to show them how to use Copilot in PowerPoint or in Word or whatever. But then more important, I think it's important to have an AI strategy and leadership development. So having that program for managers so they understand the change management, and they also understand some of the things around ethics as well. And if your organization doesn't have a general AI policy, I would, encourage you to be a part of the team that develops that. And if there is a policy already in existence, maybe IT created it, that you look at it and look at how does that affect the organization through an L&D lens, which is also critical. I'm going to go over to the chat because there's a question here, and I want to try to answer that for you. So Robin posted a question and said, what if you have no choice to bang it? Meaning the change requires a platform change that makes you move everyone from one platform to another in order to flip the switch so everyone gets it. For example, switching your email provider. Any advice for best practices if you have no choice? Well, there can be a readiness campaign before that, and some change management. And then just being, in some cases, we've done some webinars to kind of talk about the changes. We've also done some quick job aids and also some smart online learning pieces. And then what's really important is to have lots of information for your help desk. So if you're a part of the testing process for that change and you come up with a list of or scenarios of what if this happens or what if that happens, that the help desk can use to help answer questions, that's going to be super important. You might also consider using a chat bot for that too, to help you answer those questions and to work people through that process. If your help desk isn't super responsive, or if they're challenged with other things as well, that might be a way to to respond to that. So I'm hoping that's helpful. I've seen that done a number of times and it's been successful. But sometimes you don't have any choice. You just have to change over. That's what happened when we switched our talent management system from the LMS to the HRS system. And we actually switched it mid-year. So it wasn't at the start of the employee evaluation process, and we had to move over all the employee performance reviews and everything. And it was a bit of a muddle mess. We're right now going through mid-year and then just kind of doing some calibrations to make sure everything was right and that we got it squared away. But we didn't have any choice on when we implemented that process. Okay, so I've shared a bunch of information with you, and I wanted to just take a minute and have you think about something different. Okay, and I always like to leave everybody with a call to action and thinking in terms of doing something different than they normally do, because for me that gives you a chance to think about how you would approach a new technology. Maybe you haven't done a new implementation of a new technology in the past year, or you're thinking about how would I approach something, especially if it has to do with my talent development or my learning and development teams or myself. There's a lot of new stuff that's coming up on the horizon. If you are a e-learning developer, you should know that a lot of the companies are incorporating artificial intelligence into their tools. They're saying it's going to make our development a lot easier. But there are some major implications that are associated with that. And there are different types of and modalities of learning that we are using now for our learners to engage them and to provide them information, whether it's just-in-time information or if it's a different way of presenting information. So I'd like to know if any of you guys have considered using chatbots for training. I know you've probably experienced a chatbot. If you go out and you go to a website and you need some help with something, and you can use a chatbot to get some answers to questions and stuff. But if you've used a chatbot for learning, if you put something in the chat, I'd love to hear about that as well. Or if you haven't, just let me know as well. I'll give you just a second to do that. Yeah. So Annie says we're attempting to use an internal GPT to provide onboarding support as a new hire coach, and it's hard. Um, yeah, I can imagine. And we do not use chatbots, and we're not allowed to use AI. Scribe was permitted, and it was only for one project. Okay. So I'm going to give you an assignment and just an example of something you can use. And I got permission from this company to do it, and I think you'll find it interesting. And I'd love to get your feedback on it, what you think, and thinking in terms of if you were to bring this into your organization as a new methodology of teaching, what would you, how would you do it, and what would you do? And I don't, I'm not part of this company. But we're going to look at doing employee training using a chatbot, and it's a different way of using it. You can have the learner go through using a smart device, so it could be a smartphone or a tablet. You can also use, with this technology, they use Slack and they use Microsoft Teams, and they can have lots of things like quizzes and different pieces and stuff. So what we're going to do is you're going to take this course. So this course is a phishing awareness course for cybersecurity. It's a 20-minute course and it has 25 examples. And you're going to get a weekly quiz every week. And it's going to cover email, text, and phone attempts. And hopefully you'll enjoy this course. The way that you'll try it out is you'll go to your messaging system and you'll use this phone number and you'll text hi, and it will start the course. So you don't have to do it right now, but I challenge you to try this. And then I'm sending my whole presentation to the group so you can get this as well. And like Jill said, the company that this is from is Mobile Coach, and Vince Hahn was a speaker for you last spring. And so if you're interested in this, I'm sure he probably would be available to work with Frederickson on this. But the only reason I'm sharing it with you is because I want you to try something different. If you've never tried taking learning via chatbot, I think you'll find it interesting. And then think about it and think about, how would I implement this and bring this to my organization? Is it appropriate for my organization? What are the challenges that we would face? How would we test it? How would we deploy it? It's a different type of learning than what we normally do. So I'd love for you to try that and just see what you think about it. And if you want to send me some information back, I'd love to have that as well. All right. So this is my mantra. I think that all of you on the call today are facilitators of introducing new innovative solutions. And we are going to be the ones that are going to guide the organization in their implementation. And we're going to instill a culture of continuous growth throughout the company. And the way we do that is just to stay ahead of that technology. So besides doing that chat bot, I would encourage you to have some more professional development, try some new technologies, do some reading. I've got some good books for you to check out if you'd like. The one in the middle, L&D's Playbook for the Digital Age, is from Brandon Carson with an acknowledgement from Bob Mosher, and it's excellent. The other two are a little more on the new technology, immersive technology field, but they're also very, very good. One is Reality Check by Jeremy Dalton, and the other is The Augmented Workforce. And it talks about augmented reality and AI and other technologies. And I would highly encourage you to read that too. And Jill said, "Yeah, Brandon presented this book on the series. You know, it's one of my favorite books when thinking about what we're going to do for the future." So I'd love for you to check those out as well. And then finally, I would encourage you to reach out to me if you'd like more information. You want to continue the dialogue. Let me know what you happened with Mobile Coach and anything else. And I think we've got some time left to answer some questions or have a dialogue. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute and see if anybody has any questions. You can either put it in the chat and I'll answer it, or I don't know if Jill, if you want to have them raise their hand and um,
I think, we can kind of do either. If you want to just raise your hand instead of taking the time to type, happy to watch for that. And Luke or I can identify who has questions, or you can enter some in the chat. And I want to say thank you, Debbie. This was very thought-provoking and interesting, and also I think some great reminders of, when we get excited about new technology, maybe some of the steps that we forget to do, or that we need to encourage others to remember to do, instead of diving in. All right, can you put the number into the chat? Oh, for the fishing demo. Luke, can you do that? Can you grab the?
Yep.
I've got it. I'll put it in there.
Oh, okay, great. All right. Anyone else have questions, points of discussion, maybe a question you haven't fully formed yet that you'd like to bring up? We do have I think, do we go till 1:15? Is that right? I can't remember.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
We are
Yeah, so
available till 1:15.
we do have a little bit of time if you all are interested. Anyone want to present their technology introduction case and for for discussion?
Well, I can just say that I've done some very successful implementations and that I've had as well some failures, and so if you have had failures, you're not alone. It happens. Um, Most of the time it's when we weren't involved at the very beginning of the process. Uh,
Nice. Yeah, and we have from Michelle, again, a thank you for those reminders and the getting excited about the shiny new thing.
Well,
And
and that's also why we have to be prepared for that. I don't know how many times I've seen a safety manager or somebody come back from a conference and they go, "Oh, we saw this by this company and we really think we need to buy it. There's this IT company that has a special learning management system and these training applications will only run on it. So we have to invest in this learning management system for our IT team." And then when you say, okay, well, we'll talk to them and make sure that that's going to work and everything. When you talk to them and you ask them, well, can you give us SCORM files that we can load in our own learning management system? Do we have to run it through their system? And they're like, no, you don't have to run it. We would prefer you do it, but you don't really have to do it. So it's really being on top of those things. Um,
Mhm. Absolutely. Oh, here we have one from Miranda. Best practices on how to measure impact of the new technology. Great
Uh,
question.
I think I'd like to come back with that, Jill, because that's kind of a loaded question. It kind of depends on the technology that you're doing
Mm.
and also what if it's a new technology or if it's replacing some existing technology. Um, so I think I'll come back to that for you and maybe you can share that with the participants.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. That would be great. Yeah, and I can see how that would be very different depending on what you're implementing for sure. Ellen. Yeah. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen.
Yeah. I love that. I love the role model concept too. That really, it's not just about looking out for gotchas and figuring out where we need to provide some different advice, but being role models really kind of changes the mindset on that. I really like that.
Yeah, and you can really make a difference because sometimes we see things that other people don't. I'll give you an example. I was brought in to help with a change process for a purchasing tool. And so the company, they were saying that we have a lot of outstanding orders that aren't closed, and we're not sure why they're not closing orders. And there are people, they're not putting in all the fields that they need to put in. And so I got involved and I said, well, let me pretend that I'm doing that, as part of understanding the process and developing job aids or whatever else to do. And so I said, can you talk me through a typical process? So the lady said, well, they put the purchase order number here and the date and the quantity, and then they scroll over to the right 3 screens, and then they pick this thing here and then they scroll back and then they do this and I'm like um could you move that one item that they had to scroll way over to the third thing instead of having to have to scroll? And she goes, yes. And I said, wouldn't that make it easier for everybody? And I'm not slamming the IT people, or anything, but sometimes UATs involving L&D teams, we have, we kind of think through processes a little different, and we can come up with some of those things. Um,
Mhm.
and so we were able to make that one change. And then we didn't really need a job aid because that changed the whole process and it made it a lot easier for everybody to do the task.
I think that's a great example of one of the things that L&D often brings to the table is that learner or user perspective. And especially when there's push from the perspective of we want to implement a tool because we think it's cool, you know,
Mhm.
or that kind of thing, to really get back in that perspective of, what is it like? Who is this for? And really getting at value, right? So, okay, does this new thing offer value or
Mhm.
not? Which is something I think L&D people are used to thinking about, you
That's
know.
true.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll give you another example. I was at a thought leader meeting around introducing AI to your organization, and there were a number of people that said IT won't let us use AI in our organization, period. And I noticed there were a couple of people that mentioned that as well. But what's happening is people are using it on their home machine, and
Yep.
then they're emailing the results to themselves at work. So they're using it. And we need to know a little bit about it ourselves, even if our organization doesn't let us use it. So there are other ways you can test the technology. There are webinars. I was noticing somebody was saying on LinkedIn that everything on LinkedIn is about AI. So there's tons of webinars out there about the technology and training things and stuff. So you can at least see how people could use the technology, even though you don't use it in your organization. And you can have that experience, or you can reach out and phone a friend who may have access and get on a Zoom call with them and ask them to do a couple of things and show you some things. I know it's for some people, it's a very serious topic and it should be, but we need to know about it. And we need to know how people are using it, what's going on, what are the things that we need to care about, and then about making it, maybe even making a business case for our organization to use it, maybe in limited fashion or very strict fashions or whatever. But it's very important to do that as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I'd love to see like a case study for, and maybe somebody on this call has it, for just a pilot for AI. That kind of getting past the no, we cannot use any of it barrier, like
Well, I'm
using the
I'm actually
limited
doing
group.
a
Mhm.
session at the ATD Intensive conference. It's coming up. I think it's in the end of August, and that's my topic is making a business case for using AI in your organization.
Ooh, all right. We might have you back for that. That sounds great. Awesome. All right. Any other questions or thoughts?
Well, I
Well,
appreciate everyone on the call today. And like I said, if you've got questions, you can either send them to the Frederickson team or you can contact me directly on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer questions. And I know that Jill and the team are going to be sharing my presentation, so you'll have that as well.
yeah. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Debbie. We really appreciate you sharing with us today and your thought-provoking session. Also, loving the resource that you provided that gives us almost a checklist of these things that you've been reminding us and that we can remind others to make sure we're doing. So really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's give Debbie a big round of virtual applause. And now I'm like, wait, where is that? we we switched to Teams, so now I can't find things in Zoom anymore. There it is. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone. A reminder that if you are interested in any of the upcoming events, and not sure where to find that information, you can contact us at info@fredericksonlearning.com. We're happy to have more of you involved in those. And thank you again for spending some time with us today and participating in this great session from Debbie.
Thanks, everybody.